It's 900 hours Central Africa time on this wonderful Friday, Jumbo Africa, and a very good morning. I'm Elvis Preslin. We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now today the focus is continuing on Zimbabwe. Now, as you know, Kendall, negotiations are underway and expected to continue on the future of Zimbabwe this morning. President Robert Mugabe, following yesterday's meeting, that's between the president and army commanders, that meeting, crucial meeting for the country.
Absolutely, and we want to find out from you on this morning, what do you make of the latest developments in Zimbabwe with everything that you've seen on social media, all those photographs as well as discussions?
Laurent says, I think that the President Mugabe is not going anywhere because President Zuma and SADC will protect him like they are protecting President Kabila from the DRC. Well, there's a link there, hashtag Zim.
Absolutely. Michael Bigamsole says, well, I'm pretty much happy with how SADC quickly came on board and talks are coming all right, says Michael. And President Mugabe's convoy was seen driving across Harare to the state offices where he met with General Chiwenga. I'm 100% sure SADC will handle this the same way ECOWAS dealt with the Gambian crisis, Michael says.
Well, balanced view there from Michael the Big M, but we're also focusing on Zimbabwe on our poll today because we want to know from you, do you perhaps foresee a multi-party democracy for Zimbabwe at last?
281 votes in, 60% of you say yes, you foresee a multi-party democracy, and 40% say no.
Well, yeah, that 40% is still a big number, but you're also tweeting us on that question, and Nombelo says right now nobody is 100% sure of what is happening there. I just heard that Mugabe said that he's still the president. Let's wait and see.
Prince K. Dube says it's the best way to go forward. One party ruling for so long has created this problem. South Africa's time is also coming in 2019.
Well, there is a warning there, but it's a Friday and we're talking sports and of course SuperSport United, eh?
Oh yeah, SuperSport United are going to the crocodile's den, so to speak. They're going to TP Mazembe, and as you can see, they pack their stadium when their team is playing. So TP Mazembe have won 5 Champions Leagues and have won 2 Confederations Cups. So we want to find out from you, do you think SuperSport United will come back with a positive result?
TP Mazembe, a big team, hey? So let's take a look at what you are telling us. Ditiro says, SuperSport got the ability to get the favorable results as they did in the semi-finals away from home. Yes, they did indeed.
True that. Michael Bigamsole says, as a Pirates fan, I wish they could go all the way because if they do, they will get a ticket to the CAF Champions League next term. And since then, they no wonder the Nedbank Cup, which comes with a Confederations Cup place for next term, they can't participate in both. So Pirates, as the runners-up, will take their place. Doing some mathematics there, Michael.
I'm telling you, hashtag watch that space. Wonderful, Mike. Thank you so much. Right now, let's take a look at your news headlines. As the world wonders who is currently in charge of Zimbabwe, negotiations continue over the future of the country's president, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. The long-awaited ANC Stalwarts and Veterans National Consultative Conference begins at Constitutional Hill here in Johannesburg this morning. And the Justice Minister is expected to announce his decision on whether to grant parole to Chris Hani's killer, Janus Wallush. Those are your headlines, and before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendo Makamate what's happening on the rugby field.
Well, quite a lot happening on the rugby field, but before we get to that, I really love the exercise in logic that Michael Bigamsole put together there.
Wonderful logic, isn't it,
I love it,
He's a mathematical genius, I think.
One way. Could probably be Greek as well. But having said that, yes, lots happening on the Springbok field. We want to see what's going to happen up against France this weekend. We're all waiting to see if we're going to get some kind of pride out of this match. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
As the Springboks are about to come out.
Alistair Coutier makes 3 changes to his starting lineup to play France this weekend in the hope of salvaging some pride after another rough week for South African rugby.
We go into a game against a team that's highly experienced, 11 finals, be it Champions League, be it Confederations Cup.
SuperSport United travel to TP Mazembe's Crocodile Pit in the first leg of the CAF Confederations Cup final.
It is an opportunity again for a cabinet in our trophy in our cabinet. So from that point of view,
Otis Gibson reveals his backroom staff, including Warriors and SAA interim head coach, miracle worker Malibongo Maketa, as one of the changes to his team. All this and more I've got for you for later on, but do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Negotiations are expected to continue over the future of Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe following yesterday's meeting between the President and the army commanders in Harare. Some reports say progress is being made towards a deal for him to resign, but Mugabe is said to be resisting and demanding guarantees and a dignified exit. He's been under house arrest since soldiers seized control of the country earlier this week. Photos of the meeting released by the Zimbabwean government show the president meeting a team of negotiators that included the Zimbabwean military commander and 2 South African government ministers representing SADC. The SADC envoy, our defense minister Nkosazana Ngakula, and the state security minister Bongani Bongo. The photos also showed Mugabe standing alongside the Army Chief General Constantino Chiwenga. Now, for the latest, we earlier crossed to our correspondent in Zimbabwe, Effort Musikiwa.
As to what is about to happen, we don't know. What we can confirm for sure is that Father Fidelis Mkonori, whom you see in some of those pictures, is said to be the mediating negotiations between President Robert Mugabe and the military. I think those pictures actually can further confirm to that. So that means all the talk about some form of negotiations or some form of talks going on between President Robert Mugabe and the military being facilitated by Father Fidelis Mkonori are actually true, because he is seen, he has been seen being part of the meetings. Regarding the First Lady, we have not confirmation as such, but we have information that she did not leave the country. She is still in the country, though she has not been seen publicly. But we understand that she is still in Zimbabwe, and she is still at the private residence.
Meanwhile, SADC has recommended an urgent summit to discuss the crisis in Zimbabwe. The SADC chair, President Jacob Zuma, arrived in Botswana last night for a binational commission meeting with his Botswana counterpart in Nkama, and Zimbabwe will be on top of that agenda.
For years, SADC has prided itself as the most stable region on the continent, but recent developments in Zimbabwe may have put an end to that claim. In what appears to be an unannounced coup, or ZANU-PF internal squabbles playing themselves out in the open, the landlocked country is in the grip of a crisis, and it seems regional leaders were caught off guard.
The organ tracker recommended the convening of an urgent extraordinary SADC summit,
but reiterated the continent's stance on coup d'etats.
SADC Organ Tracker Plus reaffirmed SADC's commitment to African Union Constitutive Act and SADC's democratic principles as they relate to unconstitutional removal of democratically elected governments.
The SADC chair, President Zuma, is in Botswana for a binational commission with his counterpart. But with events in the neighboring Zimbabwe threatening to destabilize the region, this will surely dominate proceedings. Zimbabwean activists are already in Botswana lobbying the regional body to stay clear of what they describe as internal party issues.
SADC could be interfering in the affairs of ZANU-PF, not in the country. ZANU-PF is where the president comes from. Emmerson Mnangagwa, the Vice President was fired, is ZANU-PF. So what is Troika, SADC Troika, got to do with internal differences within the party?
President Jacob Zuma is expected to give an update after receiving the briefing from his envoys he dispatched to Zimbabwe. Mzondile Mbeje, SABC News, Gaborone.
Now, we spoke to Mzondile Mbeje earlier from Gaborone, the capital of Botswana, where the Troika is expected to meet and discuss the political developments in Zimbabwe since Tuesday.
Yesterday, the ministerial Troika meeting took place here in Gaborone to look at these issues that are affecting the issue of Zimbabwe. Remember that at the minister's level, they can only recommend. So whatever is it that they have recommended can be ratified by the heads of state. Right now, they have recommended an extraordinary summit of SADC and possibly to take place on Sunday, maybe here in Gaborone or South Africa. That's when some of those concrete suggestions will be tabled before the heads of state. You'd remember President Jacob Zuma is the chairperson of SADC. I think he's the pointsman, he's the person they will speak to, and then he will engage with his counterparts from the region. And then from there, they will be able to tell us what exactly is happening. What we're still hearing from now, it's bits and pieces from here and there. You would remember that the chairperson of the SADC, the president of South Africa, sent his envoys to Zimbabwe on a fact-finding mission. They were supposed to come to Gaborone to report to him because he's here in Botswana, where he will be meeting President Ian Khama for the Binational Commission. But we were expecting them to come here to brief him so that he can be able to appraise perhaps the continent and the world of what is happening. But we understand that there were other meetings that they had to engage in. So as a result, they slept over in Zimbabwe. So that meeting could only now perhaps happen in South Africa when the president is back. But there's a lot of happenings, Leanne, to try and resolve the issue of Zimbabwe. So later on today, the president will have the opportunity to speak to both President Ian Khama and President Jacob Zuma to really get the sense of how they stand on this. You know that the issue of Zimbabwe affects these countries the most. South Africa being the biggest country that receives those people who run away from Zimbabwe. And indeed, Botswana is also faced with a similar situation. So we are expecting them to say something very concrete to try and move to resolve this issue.
The United Nations has called for calm in Zimbabwe following the apparent coup. The UN Secretary-General has welcomed the efforts by the Southern African Development Community, or SADC, and is said to be in contact with the African Union and the regional leaders. The United Nations is urging the country to aim for democratic governance at this time of uncertainty. Nick Harper reports from New York.
The spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, says that he is closely following developments in Zimbabwe and calls for continued calm. Stefan Dujarric noted that the Secretary-General underlines the importance of resolving political differences through what he called peaceful means, including through dialogue and in conformity with the country's constitution. Well, this is the second day running now that the UN has spoken about the situation. A day earlier, on Wednesday, spokesperson Farhan Haq had very similar comments to make, that the UN Secretary-General was monitoring the evolving situation and that he appealed for calm, non-violence and restraint. It's clearly a difficult subject for the UN to deal with. The UN is clear on its position that fundamental rights, including freedom of speech and assembly, must be preserved. But while the UN can urge and suggest a way forward, it does not have the power to directly influence the situation. Diplomats at the UN here in New York have also been monitoring the situation closely. The UK Ambassador Matthew Rycroft has called on Zimbabwe to respect safety and security, and he has also appealed for calm. Now, at present, the UN Security Council isn't scheduled to meet to discuss the situation, but that could, of course, change. As for Robert Mugabe himself, well, the UN has at times had a checkered relationship with the Zimbabwean president. Different UN members have had differing opinions of the leader. The US and the UK, for example, have accused him of corruption, suppressing political opposition, racial discrimination and human rights abuses. As for Mugabe himself, he has often lashed back at those countries. At the United Nations General Assembly this year, he called US President Donald Trump a giant gold Goliath. Meanwhile, China and Russia have in the past vetoed sanctions against Zimbabwe at the Security Council. China has been a major trading partner and investor in Zimbabwe. And just last month, Robert Mugabe was removed as a World Health Organization Goodwill Ambassador. That was following criticism that his appointment was a badly judged decision on the part of the United Nations. Nick Harper, SABC News, New York.
As confusion reigned with the fall from grace of Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, we're asking you this question on our poll today. Do you foresee a multi-party democracy for Zimbabwe at last? Free at last? Very free at last, some say. 341 votes in. 59% of you in South Africa and on the continent of Africa are suggesting that yes, you do foresee a multi-party democracy for Zimbabwe. 41% are suggesting no. James Jaka says, SADC, they must take note that this is no crisis. There is no crisis in Zimbabwe. It's business as usual. We do not want them at the moment. Well, there's another take there. Alligator says, our capability isn't to judge the country. Let's wait and experience the thought there. Tuba says, the problem in Zimbabwe is that not that ZANU-PF have been in power for so long, rather that President Mugabe has been hanging on for so long. The long-awaited ANC Stalwarts and Veterans National Consultative Conference is expected to start at the Constitutional Hill here in Johannesburg this morning. More than 700 ANC members and members of civil society groups are expected to attend a three-day gathering. It's been referred to as a way forward to salvage the ruling party from its downward spiral. But the ANC has distanced itself from the conference and has indicated that those who will be attending will be doing so in their personal capacity.
The group of concerned ANC stalwarts and veterans was established last year. It was formed after the ANC lost 3 key metros in the municipal elections. The stalwarts also tried to influence the party to recall President Jacob Zuma following the Constitutional Court ruling on Nkandla. The group says it's time for the ANC to introspect.
We have been trying to persuade the ANC since after the Constitutional Court judgment last year, when we established ourselves as a veterans and stalwart platform, to highlight the importance of an approach to dealing with introspection that is really genuine, that would allow, in fact, ANC members the space to fully engage with the issues that affect them and that are actually destroying their organizations.
But the ruling party has dismissed the conference.
The ANC has no national consultative conference. Anybody who organizes that, take the initiative, they can do it. Anybody who goes there, you go there as an individual member of the ANC. It is not an ANC national consultative conference.
It's always disappointing when those who are in leadership fail to see an opportunity and capture the moment, even if for opportunistic reasons. But the fact that they will formally say that they are not involved, that's okay, because we organized this conference knowing in the first instance that they would not necessarily take a formal stand.
The group says its consultative conference will assist the new leadership emerging out of the next month's conference to rebuild the ANC for the 2019 elections. Muntlengani Dipoku, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, we will cross to the Constitutional Court a little bit later to that conference, so you don't want to miss it. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, the Justice Minister, Michael Masuta, will announce his decision on whether or not Chris Hani's killer, Janus Walush, will be released on parole. Masuta's press briefing follows the Supreme Court of Appeal ruling in August, which gave the minister 90 days to make a decision Walush, a Polish immigrant, and Conservative Party MP Clive Derby-Lewis, who supplied the weapon that Walush used to kill the SACP leader Chris Hani in his driveway in Boksburg in 1993, were sentenced to death for the murder in October 1993. Their death sentences were later commuted to life imprisonment in November 2000. Now we will take a short break, and when we return, we give you more on Zimbabwe.
Could I get an alcohol-free beer, please?
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, but make it a castle-free.
Castle-free, 0% alcohol, 100% Castle.
Do you have a funeral policy?
Making someone's dreams come true is not always as simple as saying yes. But AVBOB's Cashback Funeral Plan not only provides funeral insurance for your family, but also helps you to say yes to life's little extras. Because for every 5 claim-free years, you'll get an entire year's premiums based on your monthly premium value, paid back in cash. SMS Duduza to 41790 and we'll call you. AVBOB, we're here for you.
If you want AVBOB to contact you, SMS Duduza and your name to 41790.
Now, breaking news. Zimbabwe's Defense Force has issued a statement after meeting with President Robert Mugabe and the SADC envoys. Now, here is the Zimbabwean Defense Force statement. It says in this statement that the military says it has made significant progress in its operation to go after what they term criminals who have been hell-bent on looting and destabilizing the country by dividing the ruling party. The ZDF says that it is interacting with its Commander-in-Chief, Robert Mugabe, on the way forward, and an outcome will be announced as soon as possible. It has also briefed the different diplomatic missions in the country on the situation and have called on the security services to carry on with their duties without hindering the Defense Force operations. The military has rebuked individuals and groups that they say have been purporting to be speaking on behalf of the army. They have called for calm and patience and have commended the nation for remaining patient and peaceful during the operation. Now, that is the latest statement coming out of Zimbabwe. And then, of course, we're asking you the question. I want you to guide us in relation to this. What do you make of the latest developments in Zimbabwe? There's a couple of comments coming through. Tafadza says, after 3 decades of Mugabe's iron fist rule, Zimbabweans have a flicker of hope that he will go, but SADC wants to turn off that little light at the end of that dark tunnel for the ordinary Zimbabwean. SADC hands off Zimbabwe. I'm sure there's supposed to be a hashtag there. Derek Howell says, Zimbabwe, one question here that befuggles me when the male government officials reach the age of 60 years old, they are forced into retirement. Why then does this not go for presidents as well? I mean, really? This one from XC says, Mugabe dug his own grave by personalizing the country. Well, those are your comments. You can keep them coming. And it does not reflect the views of the SABC, by the way, but we'll read them as we continue. I'll continue with the coverage on Zimbabwe and the situation there, joined in studio by Tino Mambeu from the organization called Zimbabwe Exile. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
A very good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
Are you concerned about the situation in Zimbabwe?
To say that we are concerned is an understatement. We are actually very happy that at least after all these years of misgovernance, corruption, thuggery, and the theft of resources, at least we have got Zimbabwe speaking with one voice. And we want to take this opportunity as well as Zimbabweans to thank the Zimbabwe National War Veterans Association for the leading role they took in making sure that at least there is a semblance of change, or there is an effort to make things better in Zimbabwe.
Is this too little, too late, you think?
No, it's not too late. There's always time for everything, and in politics, decades. Nothing may happen in a decade, but in a week, it's quite significant.
Now, there was a meeting yesterday between the army and the president at the State House. Is that a step in the right direction?
Well, because we are not under a coup as the world would like to view it. We are just the people that are trying to sort their problems out. And we thank the army for stepping in and making sure that there is sanity, both in government and in the country. So we as Zimbabweans, we see it as an opportunity to say our voices are being heard. And we are also looking forward to hear that the president has resigned, because he knows very well that he has overstayed his welcome. Yeah.
But you say it's not a coup.
It is not a coup.
But there's a lot of suggestions that the army has intervened, and it's supposed to be an interaction that is supposed to be facilitated by government. So what happened here is that the army has taken over.
No, the army is not taken over. Mugabe is still the president. I think we have seen him with the chief of defense forces. He's the commander-in-chief. We are talking to him, and we are only laying our grievances to him through the army. And very soon, the people themselves will be laying their grievances to him. And I believe you me, if he does not want to resign, tomorrow is another day. We are planning as Zimbabweans to march to State House. And the army is not going to stop anybody from that, because we think we have got the power as the people.
So who is in charge? Because it seems like the president is still giving the orders. He says he's not stepping down immediately. They're negotiating, but he says he needs to negotiate first.
Well, dictators have got a tendency of not letting go. This is very common. But when he is faced with the multitudes of Zimbabweans that will be marching in Harare tomorrow, then he has got no option. He has got to leave. And we want to see a dispensation where we have a national transitional authority. We don't care who is the leader. Could it be Mnangagwa, could it be Tsvangirai, whatever the case. At least it's change, and we are looking for change. That's what we want.
Talking about national transitional government, that's the question that we pose to our viewers today. Your thoughts on that? Is that a possibility where you see a government of national unity?
I think our army is very professional, and everybody else is very professional. And the war veterans as well have always been on record. You remember the chairman, Chris Mutsvangwa, has even come as far as South Africa to engage the diaspora community, the farmers that left Zimbabwe, and all the business people that left Zimbabwe, and said, please guys, come and let's talk and let's build Zimbabwe. So this effort will now culminate into a national transitional authority. We have seen that elections have no tendency of fixing anything in Zimbabwe. Actually, they've got a tendency of bringing poverty and corruption and all sorts of things that you can associate our country with. But now, going forward with your question, I would say we are going into a national transitional authority, and you will be very surprised that things are going to normalize within 3 months, because we are saying to Zimbabweans, to those that have got a brick must come with a brick, those that have got mortar must come with a mortar, and we want to build our country. And we want to urge as well all Zimbabweans across the world and in the diaspora to say, when we call for people to come and march to State House or wherever, they must heed the call, because we believe the time is now. And in this new dispensation that we are looking at, we want to see the youth being active. You'll remember we've got our own heroes, the likes of Promise Mukwananzi, Esi Lumumba, Fadzai Mahere, this flag Pastor Ivan. We all want them to be part of this new administration that is coming on board. In terms of time, how long should it take? 5 years, 10 years, doesn't really matter, because what the people want are not elections. Every nation needs food and water, sanitation, and they need to be able to know that at least you can take your money from the bank.
Multi-party democracy, does that include leaders from the opposition as well as the current ruling party? Mnangagwa's name has been mentioned, also the MDC leader, Morgan Tsvangirai.
Yes, we want to see everybody that is capable of bringing positive change to Zimbabwe being on board. We are not going to have a situation where this change only benefits a few, because this is the very same system that we want to take the country away from. So we are saying everybody must be welcome, and Zimbabweans at large must participate. And to SADC, we still reiterate our position that this is an internal matter. We are not going to see any bloodshed. The police who wanted to be stubborn have been neutralized, and they are also on board. So there's not going to be bloodshed in Zimbabwe. It's the people that are only taking matters into their own hands, obviously spearheaded by the war veterans and the army, which is the last line of defense in any country or any institution.
The South African development community is currently meeting in Botswana regarding the Zimbabwean situation. What do you make of their involvement? Because many Zimbabweans have indicated that they are against their involvement.
Well, the reason why we are saying that is because they are quick to want to think that we are having a coup. You know, we have had several instances where they did not intervene. You know, where they have come out and supported regimes. And we are very skeptical, and we think that Africans at large should now start to introspect and say, is this what we really want in Africa? We have got to have a new way of thinking, and that new way of thinking will have to be thorough. And the new generation, myself and the other guys out there, we are going to make sure that Africans to see things differently. We do not want constitutional order. When we fought, when our parents fought against apartheid government, there was a constitution by then. But people had to defy a constitution. So constitutions are made, and they can also be defied because they do not serve the purpose of the masses.
The president under house arrest, but you say he's still making the decisions. So that doesn't constitute a coup.
Well, he has always been under arrest. He was arrested by Mugabe a long time ago, and people have not really seen that. That is why the First Lady is, in fact, I don't want to call her the First Lady. She does not deserve that name. The woman has always said, she has always said, I call this vice president to my office, and Mnangagwa doesn't listen. Who is she? In our constitution, we do not have space for a first lady. We do not have that. So she had actually captured, and we were under a bedroom coup for a very long time, and we did not realize that because we only see Mugabe say instructions. So for us, it's as good as the same. You cannot have a president who is inactive, who uses his wife to run the country. So it's a semblance of normalcy that we have currently under the army, if you want to call it under the army, but the army is not making decisions. Have they decided policy? No, they have not done that.
Are you then suggesting that grace led to the fall of Robert Mugabe?
Yes, she's the devil whisperer in the men's head. She has actually made sure that she captured him. And alongside him, there were the G40 elements who were bent on on destroying the resources of the country, putting in, crafting laws and statutory instruments that benefited them and them only. And they were about to go into the second phase of their plan, making sure that they create a dynasty, another maybe 10 years for Grace, 10 years for Kasukuwere, and 10 years for Jonathan Moyo. This is where things were going. And we thank the army for rooting out such elements who abuse the head of state for their benefit. Because it's easy to manipulate a man that goes around with a catheter, who cannot control his own body functions. How can he not be manipulated by the woman who will be changing his diapers? You know, it's very easy.
Is she one of those criminals that the army generals are hunting down?
Well, to say that, you know, we are a very peaceful people and we are a very forgiving nation. I do not want to see Grace arrested in any case. I understand that she overstepped her mandate, normal mandate as a human being, as a wife to the president. But to say that we should meet punishment on her, it would be unnecessarily so. And for President Mugabe, we still wish that he remains in Zimbabwe so that he can enjoy a new change of government, so that he can feel how things can be done. We don't want to relegate him to the east, to Singapore. We don't want to relegate him to South Africa, or anywhere for that matter. He's still our man. He has also got to get the good things out of this dispensation, and he will obviously like it. I promise you.
My good sir, I thank you so much for your time and all the best of luck in Zimbabwe.
Thank you and God bless you.
Now there you have it. That was Mr. Tino Mabeyu. He is from the organization called Zimbabwe Exile here in studio. Now back to our top story today, which is the beginning of the ANC Stalwarts Veterans Consultative Conference. We are joined by our reporter Nkosazana Gatane from the Constitutional Hill here in Johannesburg, where the conference is expected to get underway any minute from now. A very good morning to you, Nkosazana. Can you paint us a picture as to what is currently happening there?
Good morning, Elvis. Yes, delegates have started arriving here at Constitutional Hill, where stalwarts and veterans will meet for the next 2 days. And the theme for this conference, the National Consultative Conference, is called Reclaiming Our History for the Sake of Our Future. And it will happen, as I say, for the next 2 days. But the guests and the delegates have started arriving. We see elders. These are people who were instrumental in the liberation for South Africa. Some of them war veterans, MK veterans, or rather liberation veterans who were instrumental in assuring that South Africa gets the freedom that we have today. But they are concerned about the ANC of today, and therefore in October 2016, following the local government elections, they came together and started this grouping that they say they want to revitalize and bring back the dignity of the ANC that brought us to where we are today. But to talk to me about all that is Wali Sirute, who is the chairperson of the Stalwarts and Veterans. Tell us about this conference in Dade. Why are we holding it?
This is a national consultative conference. What that must mean is that we want to consult within the ANC with our people about two things. First, about South Africa. And the reason why we want to consult is because we are saying South Africa has been plunged into a crisis and it needs to be saved. But that crisis also emanates from the fact that the ANC itself is in a crisis. So given that, we're saying let us identify what is the problem. Why did the ANC, why has the ANC been plunged into a crisis? And then say, if we understand why, what must we do? That's the purpose of this conference. But also we must ask the same thing about our country. The country is almost not functioning. Why? And once we understand why, we should then be able to say, what must we do? Today, what is happening is that we will be with the organs of civil society, people from mass democratic movement, people from the NGOs. The reason why we are opening our conference with that is because we want to listen, we want to exchange, we want, if it is possible, to arrive at a consensus as to what is the way forward from here.
But of course, the two things that you have spoken out about in the past was the fact that one, the ANC must deal with state capture, but also some of you have said that President Zuma should step down. Where do you stand with those two issues today?
Well, you know, in essence, the Veterans and Stalwarts did express itself about the fact that Comrade Zuma must step down. So that is the fact of the Veterans and Stalwarts. And you are correct. One of the key issues that will be discussed here is this whole thing about state capture. What does it mean? How did it happen? For what reasons? Tomorrow we'll be having commissions, and of course it is in that platform of commissions where that will go into very serious detail. We've listened to what the media says, we've listened to what all kinds of people say about that, but we have to have our own opinion about that. And so we're giving our chance tomorrow through the various commissions to enter deep into that discussion.
But of course, when we get here, we see that people are holding ANC branded materials, and there's the ANC all over. But Secretary General Gwede Mantashe spoke out to say that, in fact, the NEC does not recognize this particular gathering.
Well, as everybody in South Africa knows, we declared right from the beginning that we are veterans of the African National Congress. We declared right from the beginning, together with them, we agreed that we must hold a national consultative conference. We agreed that the reason why we should hold a national consultative conference is precisely because we agreed. The ANC is in a crisis, the country is in a crisis. The difference between us and them emanated when they were saying, when his office was saying, we should hold the National Consultative Conference back to back with the National Policy Conference. We said if the ANC is in crisis, deep crisis as we are saying, it cannot be that we hold them back to back. Let's separate them, let the Policy Conference go on. We will go, let's also come together and go on with the National Consultative Conference. The discussions were even so advanced as we had already chosen teams that will deal with that together with them. So, speaking for the veterans and stalwarts, we have not deviated from anything. We have been very categorical in declaring that we are very disciplined members of the ANC, you see. So I cannot speak on behalf of the Secretary General, but on behalf of the stalwarts and veterans, they know this conference is on the ANC, seeking a way forward when our organization is in serious trouble.
Well, that is Wally Sirute, the chairperson of the stalwarts and veterans of the African National Congress. They're meeting here for the next 2 days. And as he said, the Secretary General of the ANC has spoken out saying that they do not recognize this, but they are hopeful that what comes out of here will inform the next steps that the ANC takes to reclaim its place, as it says, in our society. And it's back to you, Elvis.
Thank you so much. A reporter there at... Now, our picture of the day comes from Zim Media Review. At Zim Media Review, Zimbabweans waking up to this Herald front page. Many will be confused by this picture. 2 days later, Mugabe is still president. There's no official information to people about what's going on, only internet speculation, it says. Hope to despair within a few hours. Now, the comment of the day comes from Vadzani Mahere. Excuse me. It says, when Zimbabwe has faced real security issues, including 2016 uprisings and 2008 election violence, SADC was nowhere to be seen. South Africa said there was no crisis. Zim is at its most peaceful today. SADC wants to come and ruin it. Please just stay out of it. Bob must go. Well, there you have it. In our courts today here in South Africa, we start in the Eastern Cape. Sentencing proceedings of Christopher Panayiotou, Zolani Zibeko and Senatembe Nembe will start in the Port Elizabeth High Court today. Panayiotou was convicted for the murder of his wife Jade in 2015. She was abducted and shot execution style at the orders of Panayiotou. In Johannesburg, 5 men accused of raping and burning to death Janet Cindy and her friend Lungelo Buthelezi in Kagiso in April are expected to appear in the High Court. Now, they are facing charges of 2 counts of murder, 2 of kidnapping and 1 of rape. Those are some of the court cases, and we'll keep you updated on those developments as they continue. Let's now take a look at the front pages from the newspapers from around the globe. And we start off in Europe. The Times reports that Robert Mugabe's resignation as president of Zimbabwe is expected as early as today, after he was summoned from house arrest to discuss the terms of his departure with generals, church leaders and international mediators. That's the Times in London, I tell you. They know more than what we know. Moving to New York, the Financial Times says that Saudi authorities are negotiating statements with princes and businessmen held over allegations of corruption, offering deals for the detainees to pay for their freedom. They say people briefed on the discussions. That's in the Financial Times. Finally, in Australia, the Australian reports that John Howard has urged the Australian Parliament to legalise same-sex marriage swiftly, but urges stronger protections. Well, there you have it, and our focus, of course, Zimbabwe this morning. That's the question on your screen right now. What do you make of the latest developments in Zimbabwe? Parole says, for the sake of Zimbabwe's economic turnaround, Mugabe should just throw in the towel and resign. By stalling the process, he is placing the whole nation in a state of panic and uncertainty. This is a dangerous status quo. Policy and political uncertainty in Zimbabwe. Goodzai says SADC has to stand with the people of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwean solutions for Zimbabwean problems. Comrade Bore says, if President Zuma and SADC were really concerned by human rights abuses, they should also have updated us on what's happening on the people who are being arrested by the military. Instead, they are concerned of only saving R.G. Mugabe alone. Those are your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we'll take a short break and we'll return right after that.
The new 1 litre from Carling Black Label. Share the ultimate reward.
Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is a South African politician and anti-apartheid activist. She obtained her medical doctorate at the University of Bristol. She was part of the Gender Advisory Committee of CODESA, former Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, and during her time at Home Affairs delivered incredible results. The ministry was awarded for service excellence and rated as employer of choice for 2010 to 2011. The first woman in 50 years to chair the African Union Commission, her term ended this year, 2017.
I'm just very grateful to all the member states for having entrusted me with this responsibility of their organization.
As chairperson, she changed the entire environment in Addis Ababa and in Africa. She brought a degree of professionalism to the AU bureaucracy. Nkosazana initiated a flagship policy, the Agenda 2063, which sets out what Africa is going to look like in half a century from now.
Are we ready for the revolution? Change everything that must be changed. I'm asking because for us to change everything that must be changed, we must have cadres. We must be united. We must unite society behind that problem. So I won't deal with everything that's here, but it also says it's full equality and freedom.
We are ready.
Back to our main story for today, which is the Zimbabwean situation. There's still that prevailing air of uncertainty over who is now actually at the helm of Zimbabwe. And in the midst of the political and economical turmoil, the question is, how would the South African country need to reconstruct itself economically and politically post-Mugabe? Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business says Zimbabwe needs to get the politics right to get the economics right. He spoke to SABC News Primetime.
If you don't get the politics right, you're not going to get the economics right. So the first port of call has got to be what the new decision makers, who they are, who is the new team, given their background, of course, and what are their priorities going to be. One of the major ones has to be economic recovery. Obviously, South Africa has a stake in that as well. But certainly, we want to see a continuation of what are the values that we would like to see upheld in a new democratic system. So I think it's very early days, given the fact that it is a military turnover, takeover.
Zimbabwe, if you look at the size of the country, population between 12 and 15 million, you look at the arable land that's there, you look at the enormous mineral wealth the country has, you look at skilled labor, educated workforce. Surely it shouldn't, if you do the right things, it shouldn't take very long to fix Zimbabwe.
I think we mustn't underestimate the amount of damage done to the economy. But once you restore hope and on which you can build some confidence, you can turn that round once you show the right leadership. And we don't know that yet. We're not clear where the chips are going to fall. But I think the message going out, there is the possibility of a game changer that will now unlock the true potential of Zimbabwe and restore its role as a much more productive economy in Southern Africa. I come back to my point. There was a time when it was the second largest economy in the region. And I think it will not get there overnight, but I think there is no quick fix. But the important point is that a new leadership, if it is able to identify an economic program which will turn the economy around, and do it on an inclusive basis. Make sure that other stakeholders are brought in to help make it happen. It's amazing how quickly you can change the mood, and on that mood you can build some real effects of betterment in the future. That's the challenge that the new political leadership will face.
What does business do in the meantime? You know, you hear stories of some factories and manufacturing processes that, you know, instead of shutting down completely because it will cost too much to resuscitate much later, they're operating at 5–10%. You know, they're not making any money, but the potential loss of shutting it down completely is enormous. And so the manufacturing, its output is at levels, you know, which are very, very low.
But that shows the extent to which there's been economic damage to the economic infrastructure, to business, to indeed business confidence. It's been more a survival kit. How do I survive? Not how do I grow and expand and unlock the potential of the Zimbabwean economy, which has been damaged and destroyed over time. So I think the important point that must emerge now is, once the politics appears to be a little more clear, will that leadership be able to turn the economy around by sending out a message that they're going to embark on an economic program with a difference, that they're not going to make the mistakes of the past. They're going to A, rectify the mistakes, and B, come out with a positive program that will build confidence and will say to the people and indeed the business people of Zimbabwe and the South African business people who've been involved, this is a game you can back. We're going to turn it around. But that, I think we're not there yet. There's some major political decisions that have to be taken.
Let's assume that ZANU-PF somehow manages to retain power, whether it's an interim structure where it's being touted that Morgan Tsvangirai might be Prime Minister, for example, and then you've got all these ZANU-PF or ex-ZANU-PF guys with the major positions. What would be investors outside looking in and saying, do we wait another 3 years until we've got elections, or would they start to think about investing?
I think they will want to hear what the new leadership says. What are they going to say about the economy? Remember, there are supposed to be scheduled elections in the middle of next year. So now we don't know whether those will take place or under what conditions they take place. Because at the end, what will matter for the credibility of the new leadership is the test of democracy. That has got to be restored. And from that, other messages must flow. But the important point here is that unless the political leadership shows and is able to demonstrate a message that they are willing and able to turn the Zimbabwean economy around on a totally different basis, they will not get the investment or the business confidence at the levels at which they want. In other words, it's not enough to come up with a survival kit. You actually want a growth program which is inclusive and involves the country as a whole in a whole new vision. Now, whether this leadership is able to do that, we'll have to see.
Warm welcome. Well, let's take a look at your weather details. But first, let's go to Drakensberg and say good morning. Look at the beautiful waters over the Drakensberg and the beautiful vegetation. The snow on the mountains. Well, I do feel like fishing, but well, that's only happening in the Drakensberg. Today's weather, we're still seeing lots of moisture over the central interior of South Africa, finding their way towards the southern parts, but just passing us by and going to Zimbabwe and Mozambique, where we are expecting thunder showers for today. Over South Africa, partly cloudy skies, and only along the coastal regions 30% chance of showers can be expected. That's in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. Over the central interior, over the northern parts of Angola, up to 80% chance of thunder showers and possibilities of thunderstorms going to the interior of DRC and Congo as well. Moving to the southern parts, going to Zambia and some parts of Mozambique, we are expecting up to 80% chance of thunder showers to thunderstorms. And moving further to tomorrow, we're still expecting similar conditions, but it will be clear in South Africa. Maybe few clouds can be seen over the interior, but going to DRC again in Congo, up to 80% chance of thunder showers to thunderstorms. And over the northern parts, nothing much can be expected. Only along the coastal regions, we're seeing 30% chance of showers to partly cloudy skies. Now your temperatures, we are expecting a maximum of 21 in Bloemfontein, 26 for Pretoria, and clear skies expected over the interior. DR at 20-21 for Durban, isolated along the coastal regions of Eastern Cape to KwaZulu-Natal. Moving to the southern parts, we're seeing Sutherland at 19 degrees and 26 over the city of Cape Town. And moving to the northern parts over Zimbabwe, we are expecting partly cloudy skies and few showers can be expected over the northern parts, but most showers can be expected over the interior of Mozambique. Going to some parts of Malawi, Mahajanga at a maximum of 35 and over Fiaranzo a maximum of 22 with 30% chance of showers forecast for today. Over the northern parts, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies with 30 to 60% chance of showers. Kigali sitting at 25 and Nairobi 31 for Kilimanjaro, and no much rain can be expected in those regions. Over the eastern parts, partly cloudy skies 29 for Kinshasa, 34 for Bangui, Yaoundé sitting at a maximum of 26. And moving to the northern parts, we're still expecting few clouds in Djibouti with a maximum of 32. Massawa sitting at 34, 30% chance of showers. Going to Juba with 36. Mogadishu at 29. Sunny skies in Khartoum can be expected for today. Over the Middle East, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies, but it should be clear in Riyadh with a maximum of 32, 34 for Dubai. Makkah sitting at 35. Port of Sudan at 31 with 30% chance of showers. Cairo at a maximum of 26 and 22 for Damascus. Moving to the northern parts, Algiers at 27, 22 for Tunis. Marrakech sitting at 28. Las Palmas at a maximum of 23 degrees. In Nigeria, we're still expecting 30% chance of showers, a maximum of 29 and partly cloudy. But going to the northern parts, clear skies can be expected in Jamina at 38 degrees and 39 for Niamey. Bamako at 38. Monrovia 28 and Conakry at 29. That is all from the weather desk. Now Yandru.
Lindiwe Sisulu was educated in Swaziland and in Canada. She was tortured in detention during apartheid for having banned ANC material. Lindiwe worked as a lecturer at the Manzini Teachers Training College in the mid-1980s. She joined the MK in exile and was intelligence operative. During 1990, when she returned to South Africa, she worked as President Jacob Zuma's PA.
As we are gathered here today, nourishing the fruits of liberation, we recognize that some of our gallant men and women with whom we fought in the deep, ugly trenches of war are not here.
She held numerous parliamentary positions since 1994, including Minister of Intelligence, Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Public Service and Administration, Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, and member of the ANC's National Executive Committee. Lindiwe was awarded Human Rights Center Fellowship in Geneva in 1992, Presidential Award for Housing Delivery by the Institute for Housing of South Africa in 2004, and International Association for Housing Science Award in 2005. Lindiwe is the current Minister of Human Settlements.
Viva! It is a must. I, Lindiwe Sisulu, have committed myself to these principles. We must stop corruption. It is alien to our movement and it is harming us. We must unshackle ourselves from the stronghold of undemocratic processes. The ANC is not for sale. So for heaven's sake, don't let anybody buy your vote. And don't you buy anybody's vote.
It's a must.
A lot of us rely on tech to survive, and Africa is already a mobile-first continent.
We build mobile technology that connects motorcycle taxis to commuters and businesses in real time.
My phone was the most important thing.
Africans are using technology to innovate. On Network, we have African technology and social media news. Even robots have heard about us.
Hello, watch Network on SABC.
For African technology and social media news, join Ms. Phumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 9 p.m.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time in the bright lights here of Johannesburg on the newsroom, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
Good morning, I'm Kendall Makamat.
Now we will be with you until 12 o'clock today, and the focus, Kendall's continue to be in Zimbabwe. Worrying times for the country, of course, negotiations happening there, and that's why we're asking a very important question.
Absolutely, there have been updates every single hour, but we still want to find out from you, what do you make of the latest developments in Zimbabwe?
So you're telling us, Simon says, Zuma and Lunga are not doing fair to us Zimbabweans. We, the citizens, support the army because their move is peaceful. In fact, we want to demonstrate to the world, the whole nation against Mugabe tomorrow. Well, that's Saturday.
Yeah, Oracle says, CC and ex-VP have got dirty hands. Ruthless leaders, no better future with them at the helm. Keep Bob in power, says Tinashe Oracle.
Well, we also continue with a poll on the same question on Zimbabwe. We want to see and to know from you whether or not you foresee a multi-party democracy for the country at last.
Right, we still have 454 votes. That's almost double what we had an hour ago. But yeah, we're still looking at about 60%. That's 59% exactly saying yes, they do foresee a multi-party democracy for Zim.
41% are saying no, but you're also tweeting us on that question. Comrade Kwandawire says, this is our problem. We shall solve it ourselves. Where was SADC for the past 20 years? A number of people do not want SADC to interfere.
That keeps coming up, though, that where has SADC been all along? Like Kimarima says, nobody can tell for sure. Zim is unpredictable.
Well, there you have it. But we also have a question, of course, the world of football, SuperSport United. Yeah?
Oh, yes. They're going to Lubumbashi to play TP Mazembe in the first leg of the CAF Confederations Cup final to see who's going to be walking away with top honors this time around. And we want to find out from you, what do you think? Will SuperSport United come back with a positive result or not?
This one from Kutalo says 2-1 win for SuperSport United.
Remember, it's Eric Tinkler, their coach, who's taking them there, and he was there with Orlando Pirates. In fact, SuperSport beat TP Mazembe a little early in the group stages this year. Kenneth Malachi says, let's hope they'll do much better than Bafani.
Bafani. Well, there you have it. There's a tinkling feeling that Tinkler might win coming back from TP Mazembe. That's where we got to leave it for now. Let's take a look now at your news headlines. Zimbabwe's Defense Force releases a statement on national television saying talks with the president, Robert Mugabe, have made what they termed significant progress, and alluding to the fact that the country would advise the nation on the outcome as soon as possible. The long-awaited ANC Stalwarts and Veterans National Consultative Forum, or Conference rather, begins at the Constitutional Hill here in Johannesburg this morning. And the Justice Minister is expected to announce his decision on whether to grant parole to Chris Hani's killer, Janus Wallace. And we will be crossing there shortly. But before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
As the Springboks are about to come out.
Alistair Gutier makes 3 changes to his starting lineup to play France this weekend in the hope of salvaging some pride after another rough week for South African rugby.
We go into a game against a team that's highly experienced, 11 finals, be it Champions League, be it Confederations Cup.
SuperSport United travel to TP Mazembe's Crocodile Pit in the first leg of the CAF Confederations Cup final.
It is an opportunity again for a cabinet in our trophy in our cabinet. So from that point of view,
Otis Gibson reveals his backroom staff, including Warriors and SAA interim head coach Miracle Walker Malibunga Makete as one of the changes to his team. All this in more detail in about 40 minutes' time. Stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. The Justice Minister, Michael Masuta, is currently announcing his decision on whether or not to grant Chris Hani's killer, Janus Wallace, whether or not he will be released on parole. Let's cross there live.
And 6 months of the sentence in terms of Section 136(1) of the Correctional Services Act, 111 of 1998. I had denied him parole by ordering a further profile to be submitted, a decision that was challenged by Mr. Wallace. The Gauteng Division of the High Court in Pretoria set my decision aside and ordered his placement on parole. The Supreme Court of Appeal, the SCA, then upheld my appeal against that judgment with an order remitting the matter to me for reconsideration and a decision within 90 days. This matter has attracted public publicity here and abroad because of the grave impact caused by the crime he committed, which is well documented. It is for this reason that we elected to communicate this decision on this platform. I have now considered the offender's application. In making my decision, I took into account the SCA judgment insofar as it related to representations made by Mrs. Hani, Mr. Yanus Walus, the applicable legislation and recommendations made by the Parole Board. Our country is a constitutional democracy, which is governed by the rule of law. Therefore, in reaching my decision, I have taken into account the relevant laws and prescripts that regulate our parole process, in particular the provisions of the Correctional Services Act 111 of 1998. The following observations have been noted from the profile submitted to me. A psychologist's report has highlighted the offender's political ideology as a risk factor in the report and is stated as follows, and I quote, regarding empathy, it can be said that he expressed remorse for the fact that the victim's children are fatherless and the wife is a widow. However, he showed no remorse for murdering Chris Hani, the communist leader. He still rationalizes his actions and insists that they were politically motivated. His ideas about communism still stand, close quote. The above clearly articulates a clearly articulated state of mind presents a potential risk as it reflects the continued existence of the primary motive that led to the commission of the offense in the first place. In this regard, and in line with my previous decision of the 10th April 2015, in which I directed that the department, in consultation with other relevant structures, advise on the security threats that might continue to exist. State security must be approached with a request to provide a security risk assessment report if the offender were to be released on parole. If one has regard to the fact that remorse is a strong feeling of sadness and regret about something wrong that one has done, the report demonstrates a person who sees nothing wrong in eliminating a communist who happens to be a father and a husband. This can in no way qualify as full remorse as he continues to justify his killing of a communist. This negative attitude towards communists is also evident in Mrs. Hani's submission in her victim impact statement dated 13th October 2017 that, and I quote, it is submitted that the victim's representations of October 2013 remain valid and undisturbed. The progress report reveals that Walus remains unchanged in his ideas regarding his anti-communist views and that he does not disavow violence as a means to retaliate against communists, close quote. Further, there appears to be inconsistencies in the offender's account of the circumstances that led to his decision to commit the offense, further justifying Mrs. Hani's persistent doubt about his sincerity. This is apparent in particular when comparing what is contained in the aforementioned psychologist report reflected in the profile report, wherein he provides a detailed account of the political context that underpinned his decision to commit the offense on the one hand, versus his assertion contained in his document titled Representations by Yakub Walus to the Honorable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, dated 5th October 2017, wherein he states the following, and I quote, at paragraph 58, I also submit that in the light of the fact that I was merely a foot soldier, it would have been very unlikely that anybody else would have been also involved, would have disclosed his identity to me, being a foot soldier at the lowest part of the ladder. I simply have no knowledge of any such person having been involved. At paragraph 59, in saying the above mentioned, I clearly cannot speak for Mr. W. Lewis, and I do not know whether he had any further information that he had not disclosed before his death. He had never shared any such information with me, should there have been any such information, close quote. On the contrary, at paragraph 6.2 mentioned above, he states the following, according to the psychologist's version of Mr. Walu's account of events underpinning the circumstances of his offense. And I quote, the offender met Clive W. Lewis in 1986. In 1987, he started helping Clive, that is co-accused, to canvass for a parliamentary position in Krugersdorp as a member of the Conservative Party. In 1989, Clive was appointed as an advisor in Parliament. The Conservative Party won a seat in Parliament. The party was gaining popularity amongst white South Africans. The then president of National Party started negotiating with the ANC. Members of Conservative Party saw this as a strategic move in the National Party to silence and disempower the Conservative Party. Mr. Walus felt that this move will lead to the country being governed by communists. In 1993, Clive suggested to him that something needs to happen to prevent communists from coming to power. It was then that Clive suggested to him that Chris Hani, then General Secretary of South African Communist Party, should be assassinated. Mr. Walus states that he felt it was necessary that the assassination happened. He also felt convinced that if he does not do it, no one will. It was then that he agreed to execute the plan. He took the order without any hesitation. In April 1993, he received a list from Clive W. Lewis. This list contained names and addresses of politicians and journalists. Chris Hani's name was third on the list. End quote. In light of the above, the department is to assist the offender to engage in further restorative justice processes, which should also include other identified victims, being the South African Communist Party and the community, as previously requested in my 2015 decision. In addition to the above, there is a need for the offender to participate in individual therapeutic programs with a social worker to enhance his social functioning skills as recommended in the social workers report. The focus of the program should be on the following identified areas of intervention. 1, assertiveness. 2, decision-making skills. 3, approach, beliefs, and behavioral patterns that leads to anger and aggression. It appears that over the entire period of his incarceration, the offender has acquired neither further academic nor vocational skills that could enhance his prospects of reintegration into society. It is therefore recommended that the department should assist him acquire any such appropriate skills. In the result, I have decided that the placement of the offender on parole is not advisable at this stage, and his application is therefore not approved. A further profile should be submitted within a period of 12 months of the date of this decision. Section 78(4) of the Correctional Services Act, 111 of 1998, states that in instances where I don't approve parole, such matters must be reconsidered by me within a period of 24 months. Section 78(2) states the following, and I quote, "If the minister refuses to grant parole or day parole in terms of subsection 1, the minister may make recommendations in respect of treatment, care, development, and support of the sentenced offender, which may contribute to improving the likelihood of future placement on parole or day parole." Close quote. In the interim, the department should assist the offender in the areas of intervention stated above. This decision has already been communicated to Mr. Walus, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now take questions, ladies and gentlemen. Karen.
Hi, Karen on the NCA. At one stage, I think there were reports that Mr. Walus had cancer.
Well, there you have it. That was the minister's decision. Of course, parole not advisable for Janus Walus and his application not approved. That is the big one, of course. Now, let's get back to some stories making headlines. Zimbabwe's Defense Force say in a statement broadcast on Zimbabwean television that it has made significant progress in its operation targeting criminals around President Robert Mugabe. The military says it is continuing to engage with the Commander-in-Chief in talks of the way forward for the country and would advise the nation on the outcome as soon as possible.
The Zimbabwe Defense Forces, the ZDF, say significant progress has been made in their operation, adding that they have accounted for some of the criminals around President Robert Mugabe in order to bring them to justice since they were committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country, while others are still at large. In a statement, the ZDF said they are currently engaging with the Commander-in-Chief, President Mugabe, on the way forward and will advise the nation of the outcome as soon as possible. The ZDF said defense attaches accredited to Zimbabwe have been briefed to appraise their principles on the obtaining situation in the country, adding that they have also advised the bureaucrats to brief their cooperating partners. The Defense Forces implored other security services to continue operations and carry out their duties without any form of impediment to their operation. The ZDF said while they appreciate the enthusiasm by certain individuals and groups within society, they want to make it clear that they should not purport to be speaking on its behalf. The ZDF said they will periodically make press releases to keep the public informed of developments in the country. Meanwhile, the ZDF is commending the nation for remaining patient and peaceful as they carry out the operation.
Now, the South African development community has recommended an urgent summit to discuss the crisis in Zimbabwe. The SADC chair, President Jacob Zuma, arrived in Botswana last night for a binational commission meeting with his Botswana counterpart in Kama, and Zimbabwe will be on top of that agenda.
For years, SADC has prided itself as the most stable region on the continent. But recent developments in Zimbabwe may have put an end to that claim. In what appears to be an unannounced coup or ZANU-PF internal squabbles playing themselves out in the open, the landlocked country is in the grip of a crisis, and it seems regional leaders were caught off guard.
The organ troika recommended the convening of an urgent, extraordinary SADC summit,
but reiterated the continent's stance on coup d'etats.
SADC organ troika plus reaffirmed SADC's commitment to African Union Constitutive Act and SADC's democratic principles as they relate to unconstitutional removal of democratically elected governments.
The SADC chair, President Zuma, is in Botswana for a binational commission with his counterpart. But with events in the neighboring Zimbabwe threatening to destabilize the region, this will surely dominate proceedings. Zimbabwean activists are already in Botswana lobbying the regional body to stay clear of what they describe as internal party issues.
SADC could be interfering in the affairs of ZANU-PF, not in the country. ZANU-PF is where the president comes from. Emerson Mnangagwa, the vice president, was fired in ZANU-PF. So what is Troika, SADC Troika, got to do with internal differences within the party?
President Jacob Zuma is expected to give an update after receiving the briefing from his envoys he dispatched to Zimbabwe. SABC News, Gaborone.
Now, earlier we spoke to Mzondile Mbeje from Gaborone, the capital of Botswana, where the Troika is expected to meet and discuss the political developments in Zimbabwe.
Yesterday, the ministerial Troika meeting took place here in Gaborone to look at these issues that are affecting the issue of Zimbabwe. Remember that at the ministers' level, they can only recommend. So whatever is it that they have recommended can be ratified by the heads of state. Right now, they've recommended an extraordinary summit of SADC and possibly to take place on Sunday, maybe here in Gaborone or South Africa. That's when some of those concrete suggestions will be tabled before the heads of state. You'd remember President Jacob Zuma is the chairperson of SADC. I think he's the pointsman, he's the person they will speak to, and then he will engage with his counterparts from the region. And then from there, they will be able to tell us what exactly is happening. What we're still hearing from now, it's bits and pieces from here and there. You would remember that the chairperson of the SADC, the president of South Africa, sent his envoys to Zimbabwe on a fact-finding mission. They were supposed to come to Gaborone to report to him because he's here in Botswana, where he will be meeting President Ian Khama for the binational commission. But we're expecting them to come here to brief him so that he can be able to appraise perhaps the continent and the world of what is happening. But we understand that there were other meetings that they had to engage in. So as a result, they slept over in Zimbabwe. So that meeting could only now perhaps happen in South Africa when the president is back. But there's a lot of happenings, Leanne, to try and resolve the issue of Zimbabwe. So later on today, the president will have the opportunity to speak to both President Ian Khama and President Jacob Zuma to really get the sense of how they stand on this. You know that the issue of Zimbabwe affects these countries the most. South Africa being the biggest country that receives those people who run away from Zimbabwe. And indeed, Botswana is also faced with a similar situation. So we are expecting them to say something very concrete to try and move to resolve this issue.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has called for calm in Zimbabwe following the apparent coup there. The United Nations Secretary General has welcomed the efforts by the Southern African Development Community and is said to be in contact with the African Union and regional leaders. The UN is urging the country to aim for democratic governance at this time of uncertainty. Nick Harper reports from New York.
The spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, says that he is closely following developments in Zimbabwe and calls for continued calm. Stefan Dujarric noted that the Secretary-General underlines the importance of resolving political differences through what he called peaceful means, including through dialogue and in conformity with the country's constitution. Well, this is the second day running now that the UN has spoken about the situation. A day earlier, on Wednesday, spokesperson Farhan Haq had very similar comments to make, that the UN Secretary-General was monitoring the evolving situation and that he appealed for calm, non-violence and restraint. It's clearly a difficult subject for the UN to deal with. The UN is clear on its position that fundamental rights, including freedom of speech and assembly, must be preserved. But while the UN can urge and suggest a way forward, it does not have the power to directly influence the situation. Diplomats at the UN here in New York have also been monitoring the situation closely. The UK Ambassador Matthew Rycroft has called on Zimbabwe to respect safety and security, and he has also appealed for calm. Now, at present, the UN Security Council isn't scheduled to meet to discuss the situation, but that could, of course, change. As for Robert Mugabe himself, well, the UN has at times had a checkered relationship with the Zimbabwean president. Different UN members have had differing opinions of the leader. The US and the UK, for example, have accused him of corruption, suppressing political opposition, racial discrimination and human rights abuses. As for Mugabe himself, he has often lashed back at those countries. At the United Nations General Assembly this year, he called US President Donald Trump a giant gold Goliath. Meanwhile, China and Russia have in the past vetoed sanctions against Zimbabwe at the Security Council. China has been a major trading partner and investor in Zimbabwe. And just last month, Robert Mugabe was removed as a World Health Organization Goodwill Ambassador. That was following criticism that his appointment was a badly judged decision on the part of the United Nations. Nick Harper, SABC News, New York.
The SABC board says board members Rachel Kaladas leaked confidential information and offered to resign due to her bad judgment. The board addressed the media in Auckland Park yesterday about the allegations contained in her resignation letter. In the letter, which was made public, Kaladas claimed that she was being sidelined and victimized for holding different opinions from other board members, specifically about the proposed group CEO, who she says has allegations of fraud and corruption during his previous employment. However, SABC board chairperson Bongomusa Makatini says Kaladas is misrepresenting herself and the board.
In the first discussion concerning executive appointments, several members expressed reservations about one candidate. Then and later, members on both sides of the argument asked that those with reservations do their research and provide a reasoned case against the candidate. All 11 non-executive directors on the 31st of October interviewed the candidate for the top positions. This was intended as an opportunity for all board members to question the candidates and raise their own concerns. Others with reservation raised them, but Ms. Kaladas remained silent. When she raised them later, the board members questioned why she alone had failed to raise concerns when she had the candidate available to respond. We regarded this as a matter of fairness. All members were aware of some allegations, but required that as a matter of good governance and fairness, we check these thoroughly in view of known cases where people have been falsely accused. At the meeting and in the subsequent emails, she admitted she should have made her case in a stronger way than she did. She undertook repeatedly to provide a clear written position, giving her reasons, but repeatedly failed to do so. Other board members with reservation took the trouble to submit their written reservations. something Ms. Kalidas repeatedly failed to do.
Sentencing in the murder trial of Port Elizabeth businessman Christopher Panayoto and 2 accused will start in the Port Elizabeth High Court today. Now, they were found guilty of abducting and murdering his wife Jade in 2015 after a trial that lasted for almost 2.5 years.
All the evidence culminated in the guilty verdict.
I'm satisfied that the evidence adduced proves the guilt of the accused on the charges specified hereunder beyond any reasonable doubt. Accused number 1 is found guilty of murder on count 4 and not guilty on the remaining counts. Accused number 3 is found guilty of robbery with aggravating circumstances on count 2, guilty of murder on count 4 and not guilty on the remaining counts. Accused number 4 is found guilty of conspiracy to murder on count 1 and not guilty on the remaining counts.
But the matter is not done yet. Panayoto's defense team indicated that an appeal is on the cards.
If they believe that in another court they will be able to get a different decision, then they are allowed to do so. As the NPA, we're saying sweet victory for us, and we will keep going and doing our job to the best of our abilities.
Panayoto's defense team will argue in mitigation of sentence, the state looking for the heaviest punishment available. Once Judge Chetty hands down sentence, the matter of Lutando Sioni will be dealt with. He was declared a hostile witness during the trial, and a decision on the legal process dealing with his involvement must still be made. Jade Lee Paulser, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
We'll bring you an update on that story. The Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, Pamela Tswete, will hand over thousands of flushing toilets in Uppington in the Northern Cape today. That's ahead of World Toilet Day on Sunday. The department's deadline for the eradication of 22,000 bucket toilets has been moved from March to June of next year.
It's estimated 4 billion global citizens live without household toilets. Tessa Adams lives at the Greenpoint informal settlement, which has no toilets. The 61-year-old says she has endured inhumane conditions for the past 15 years. This has left her frustrated.
We are using the trench for toilets, and it's a health risk for our babies and our elderlies. And many things can happen because they're gonna rape them, they're gonna kill them, and so forth. And what will we do?
Her neighbors share similar sentiments. We don't have toilets. If your child wants to go to the toilet at night, they have to do it somewhere in the yard. These trenches are disgusting. They promised they would give us toilets and water and that we would be surveyed, but we are still waiting. Officials say the mushrooming shacks contribute to the backlog.
The bulk of it now is on informal stands that we need to address. The housing backlog in the Northern Cape is sitting at around 53,000. So you'll see the extent of work that needs to be done. Our biggest concern is obviously in Kimberley, where we're led to believe that the informal settlements, there's around about 12,000, between 10 and 12,000 buckets being used on the informal stands.
The Water and Sanitation Department will hand over thousands of flush toilets to Uppington residents on Friday. On Sunday, the United Nations will observe World Toilet Day. Their target is to ensure global access to sanitation by 2030. Nolutando Ngakani, SABC News, Kimberley.
Sports Live, Saturday and Sundays at 8:30 p.m.
Show me a greater power on the whole continent of Africa. Show me a greater power anywhere.
6th of June 1918 was the establishment of our movement to maintain that.
We need to do something about the educational upliftment of the Afrikaner, and we also need to do something about the economic upliftment of the Afrikaner. And that was the two main goals at that stage in 1918.
The Brotherhood never was a cultural organization. It was a state-capturing organization. It is, in fact...
I like that term.
It has captured the financial systems. It has captured the parastatals. It has captured cultural organizations.
For all your constitutional and legal matters, tune into Rights and Recourse on Sundays between 2 and 3 Central African Time.
Welcome back. Time for a little bit of sports before we carry on with other heavy news from the day. Now, with rumours flying around at home that he's going to get a less than warm welcome back from the Springboks Northern Hemisphere tour, coach Alistair Coetzee is scrambling to find answers after his side's record 38-3 defeat to Ireland. He's made 8 changes to his matchday 23 to face France in Paris on Saturday night. In comes fly-half André Pollard and inside centre Francois Venter, while Dwayne Vermeulen is back at 8th man after over a year out of the Springbok setup.
After a woeful night in Dublin, Coetzee has benched both Elton Jantjies and Damian de Landy for Pollard and Venter. It'll be a gamble to see how Pollard gels with Ross Cronje as the halfback pairing. However, Venter's presence at centre should at least help shore up the midfield. Should Coetzee choose to employ the high ball game again, it'll be the same players, namely Cronje, Courtnall Skosan, Dylan Lades and Andries Coetzee, who collectively failed to execute or defend that tactic at the Aviva Stadium last Saturday. In the forward pack, Wilco Lowe gets his first test start for the Boks at tight head alongside Malcolm Marx and Tendai Mtawarira. While Dwayne Vermeulen, who plays for Toulon in France, joins the back row together with Francois Lowe and Sia Kolisi. More will be expected of them with ball in hand and at the breakdown. The rest of the changes are on the bench, where Trevor Nyakane and Dan Dupree join Jantjies and de Landy as the replacements. Coetzee has cautioned that Saturday's French team will not be the same one that was beaten 3-0 in the June series in South Africa.
For France.
Now, Proteas head coach Otis Gibson has used the ensuing weeks since his appointment to the Proteas hot seat well, choosing who to populate his war room with. Just yesterday, he revealed Warriors cricket coach Malibonga Maketa as his assistant among 3 changes he made to his coaching staff. Maketa, who has performed miracles with the Eastern Cape franchise, the Warriors, was yesterday elevated from his other position as SAA interim head coach to the Proteas side. He's one of 3 new faces in the new coaching department. The others are former Proteas all-rounder Dale Bankenstein, who's one of the batting coaches, and another former Proteas, Justin Ontong, who's the new fielding coach. And Eric Tinkler will need to summon up all the experiences gained from campaigns on the continent with his former team Orlando Pirates when he takes SuperSport United to Lubumbashi to play 5-time CAF Champions League winners and 2-time CAF Confederations Cup winners TP Mazembe this weekend. Coach Eric Tinkler is taking a depleted but fired-up squad to the DRC to play in the CAF Confederations Cup first leg final in Lubumbashi on Sunday.
Tinkler is vastly experienced when it comes to CAF football. He was assistant coach at Orlando Pirates when they reached the Champions League final and was head coach when the Bucks qualified for the Confederations Cup final.
We're going to be relying on the depth that we have in the squad, and obviously that's the experience that I gained while being at Pirates. That was what was always being put into question, is the depth. Do you have the depth?
The only missing feather in Tinkler's cap is the gold medal. And against TP Mazembe in the DRC, it's like entering the lion's den.
We go into a game against a team that's highly experienced, 11 finals, be it Champions League, be it Confederations Cup. But you know, the morale and everything in camp with the players that are here is obviously very, very good.
The only South African club to win this tournament was Kaizer Chiefs. At the time, it was called the Mandela Cup. Thembasheba, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, of course, you have been tweeting us the entire morning with your thoughts on what's going to happen to SuperSport United. We'll definitely be bringing you some of your thoughts a little later in this bulletin. Now, Bidvest Wits coach Kevin Hunt has described the coming week as the most important for the club this season. Wits take on Kaizer Chiefs in the first semi-final of the Telkom Knockout this coming Saturday before facing African champions Mamelodi Sundowns 3 days later. Currently, the students are a shadow of the club that won a double last season.
Wits find themselves in unfamiliar territory after lifting the ABSA Premiership title last season. They have the worst defensive record in the league so far, having conceded 13 goals in 9 matches. Hunt's side is second from the bottom of the log and need to change their fortunes around to move out of the relegation zone. And a win against Amakosi in a cup match will be the right medicine for players low on confidence.
Obviously, there's a couple of benefits. You know, morale, you know, always helps you in cup competitions. Obviously, we've got a big league game on Tuesday as well against Sundowns. Our league situation is not very good at the moment. I mean, we need more points. We certainly, I mean, it's so close. You've looked at the league, it's so close. One win here and a loss here makes it, you know. So, you know, but we've got to approach Saturday first. I think that's important. And then we've got a big week. I mean, we play Tuesday and Saturday. So that's important for us. This week it's a big week for us.
But the students shouldn't be taken lightly, having registered their first win of the season against Orlando Pirates in September.
I think at home we are strong. I think it's the last season we proved it become our fortress. It's where we like to play, where we won a lot of games and picked up a lot of points. It's different to go into FNB with not that many people there. You know, hopefully there'll be a lot of people at the game on Saturday, and it'll be an interesting game.
Meanwhile, Bloemfontein Celtic want to repeat what they did 5 years ago when they lifted the Telkom Knockout Trophy. Celtic have transformed following the appointment of Serbian coach Veselin Jolusic before the start of the season.
We don't have any pressure. Our goal, our aim is to do the best what we can do at the moment. And we are going to compete until last minute of the game, and it is all.
But Celtic are still 2 matches away from realizing their dream. They first have to beat Polokwane City in Limpopo on Sunday in order to reach their first final in 5 years. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Right now, that was the sports. We have a whole lot in store for you in terms of news and live events happening around the continent. We do, for example, have President Jacob Zuma, who's out in Botswana. We bring you all of that in a very short time. Just make sure that you stay close to Newsroom, because you know what, if you miss out on this, these are the big days before big happenings happen. As we all know, we've been trying to keep track of what's happening, the latest happenings out in Zimbabwe. Now, as I mentioned a little earlier, there's a bilateral that Jacob Zuma is, our President Jacob Zuma is involved in right now in Botswana. We're going there now live to hear what he's saying.
On the occasion of this, the 4th session of the Binational Commission between our 2 republics, we are happy to note that our bilateral cooperation has greatly expanded since the establishment of the BNC. We cooperate in many fields, including education, health, agriculture, trade and investment, energy, science and technology, immigration, justice, security, tourism, environmental matters, water, transport, to mention but a few. The BNC has thus provided a momentum in strengthening our relations as demonstrated by the existence of over 30 agreements and memoranda of understanding. We should now prioritize implementation of these legal and enabling instruments. Based on this assessment, Mr. President, we were therefore perfectly correct to establish our binational commission. Ladies and gentlemen, as we implement our agreements, we also need to pay a particular focus on economic cooperation. This will help address poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment. We cannot overemphasize the importance of cross-border economic projects, economic zones, economic diversification, and industrialization. Mr. President, one area that needs to be further strengthened is cultural cooperation at a government-to-government level by fully implementing the 2005 Memorandum of Understanding on Culture. We note with appreciation, though, a dynamic interface among our arts and culture and cultural groups. Ladies and gentlemen, with regards to our neighborhood, SADC, it is vitally important to advance regional integration by assisting in dealing with remaining peace and security challenges and implementation of SADC industrialization strategy and its action plan. During our chairship of SADC, we will prioritize the implementation of identified regional projects. With regards to our continent, we remain totally committed not only to the unity of the continent, but also to the implementation of AU Agenda 2063, especially continental integration and silencing of the guns by 2020. Your Excellency, let me conclude by once more thanking you for inviting us to visit your beautiful country. I look forward to our deliberations, which I hope will set in motion a strategic direction towards enhanced cooperation and partnership between our sister republics in keeping with the historical and cultural bonds that uniquely bind us. I thank you.
Last sentence was very when I was passing the casino, I said, that edge came, you know, said, I'll just try, you never know. You might go home with 80,000, you know, times 4 the amount that you have. And that stupid day, I lost all my money.
Never allow glamorous lifestyles to push you beyond your means.
The awakening moment was that 2007, when I left my children alone. I realized this is hurting me.
Ask for professional help if gambling is controlling you. Know when to stop.
I faced reality that, you know what, for you there's no quick reach, you know, so you just have to work hard. So it's gone.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30. Baleka Mbete taught in Babana in Swaziland, worked for the African National Congress in several African cities, including Dar es Salaam, Nairobi, Gaborone, Harare, and Lusaka. Mbete became the first Secretary General of the ANC Women's League after the unbanning of the ANC. Amongst other leadership roles, she was the member of the Presidential Panel on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the ANC National Executive Committee, and the Pan-African Parliament. She was Deputy President to Kgalema Motlanthe in 2008. She's the current Speaker of the National Assembly of South Africa since 2014 and National Chairperson of the ANC. Mbete was awarded the 2016 King Legacy Award by the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation in the United States for her distinguished leadership roles over the years and for her positive contributions in the global community.
I take with humility, and it puts quite a burden on one's shoulders, but I guess also throughout one's life in struggle, maybe it was a preparation for this day.
The excitement is tangible in the chandelier foyer of the Artscape Theatre in Cape Town. Getting ready for a performance is 74-year-old retired teacher Reggie Dreyer. He once had magnificent dreams of becoming a pianist with the Cape Philharmonic Orchestra and, in 1960, passed an audition. But apartheid put an end to the dream. The theatre would not become a home to him. And, almost impossibly, he harbours no bitterness.
So much water flows under the bridge since then. I was very heavily involved in my own music and in choirs and in teaching. So yeah, it was disappointing, and now I feel very happy, very elated that the dream came true.
Half a century after he played a Mozart piece in his audition, he approached the orchestra's Louis Heinemann and again sat down to play the first movement from Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 23.
To play piano on this level at 74 doesn't happen often. And I was skeptical when he approached me for the first time, but the moment he walked into the audition and he played the first couple of notes, we knew that we could use him. And it was also time for us to make a wrong right. And I'm very happy that we could be part of this.
On a Tuesday afternoon, in the summer of 2017, Reggie Dreyer took his place in front of a grand piano in the Artscape Theatre to once again play the Mozart piece, this time with the orchestra.
That was the first time I got actually, shall I say, nervous, but I got a bit of butterflies, and strangely enough, my hands started shaking. But that was the first time it happened. But when I started playing, it was okay. It's okay again. Yeah.
And how did it feel? How did it go?
It was very, very moved, and I think the orchestra is really doing great justice to the music they were playing. So yeah, I felt at home when the concerto started, and quite at ease.
Dreyer says he still found fulfillment through music and taught many others how to appreciate it as a teacher. But playing with the orchestra is one of his great dreams realized. Flying in from London to be with her father on the big day, his daughter Lynn Connolly says Dreyer is a classical man that always felt the music.
It's where he's always wanted to be, and even though, you know, everyone said he's never played with a symphony orchestra before, when he plays the music, I genuinely believe that he hears the orchestra in the background. When he plays, he can hear everything. He's amazing, and I'm so super proud of him.
Artscape CEO Marlene Leroux says the theatre must be a home for all and in some way try to heal some of the wounds of the past.
With our program is the reconciliation program, and to say it's not just for the young to come, it's the healing process. And today we've experienced endless possibilities with the new South Africa, and how brilliant Uncle Reggie is still today, and how privileged we are as South Africans today to experience the miracle of how music can bring people together.
And at 74, Dreyer is not done dreaming yet.
Well, I must tell you that I've asked Louis Heinemann for the whole concerto. I've only played one movement, but I would love to do the whole concerto at another concert. And I hope that will materialize. Music does move me, you know, it does things to a person. And I think that's why I'm so healthy, because I do music. And I still feel young at heart, you know.
His fingers dancing on the black and white keys with joy is a gift Reggie Dreyer will cherish forever. Mariska Botha, SABC News, Cape Town.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time, coming from the bright lights here in Johannesburg, South Africa, Jumbo Africa, and a warm welcome to the final hour. Now, today we focus on Zimbabwe. As you know, negotiations are expected to continue over the future of Zimbabwe's President, Robert Mugabe. That's following yesterday's meeting and between the President and the army commanders. Question of the day, we are asking you, what do you make of the latest developments in that country? Let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle. This one from Simon says, Zimbabwean constitution requires the president to resign if he's not fit on medical grounds or to impeach him. The Zimbabwean army should engage constitution lawyers to assist. Of course, there's also the poll that we're doing for you, but we foresee, if you do foresee a multi-party democracy for Zimbabwe at last. But that we're going to leave for now, because right now we have to go to Rivonia, where it is happening, and the Department of Art and Culture is launching the online digitized audio-visual recordings of the Rivonia trial. The aim is to build a global awareness of the various issues of heritage and make these recordings accessible to the present and future generations. The Department of Arts and Culture is today launching an online digitized audio-visual recordings of the Rivonia trial. Let's go there live.
2013 have been digitized. And today we will demonstrate that the digitized recordings will indeed be available to all South Africans and the rest of the world on the database of the National Archives and Record Service of South Africa. This is a testimony to the strong relationship between South Africa and France. Our President, His Excellency, Honorable Jacob Zuma, during his state visit to France last year, during an occasion where he himself received the result of this progress set, as you have correctly indicated that, I quote him, "It charted a new path for the country in safeguarding this exceptional heritage," close quote. Similar sentiments to this expressed by our President were also echoed by the Ministry and the former French ambassador to South Africa, Madame Babi, during the event held at Courtroom C last year. This project is an illustration of the mutual trust established between France and South Africa. And most importantly, the partnership is a sign of France's commitment to contributing to the transformation of South Africa, in particular through the development of professional training for South African archives. Not forgetting what you did to us some few days ago, where you provide us the right to host the Rugby World Cup. As far as the training is concerned, I'm happy to inform you that 4 South African archives will be trained in the near future in the use of the technology to uncover more of our history that are currently locked in dicta belts countrywide. It will be a good thing. Instead of us now and then knocking at your doors in France, you will have to train our own, and we are very happy about that, so that they can train the trainers in our country. These 4 archivists will continue to train other archivists nationwide to make sure that thousands of dicta belts throughout the country are digitized for easy access to all. The National Archive is currently embarking on research to determine the extent of dicta belt collection throughout the country. Our department has purchased 2 archiphones, a special custom-built machine that was developed in France for the express purpose of digitizing dicta belts without damaging the original dicta belt, so that we can continue with the work without having to take any dicta belt out of the country ever again. When I was talking to the Director General and the staff, I said that I'm very happy to discover that even in this department that I've just joined, that France is playing a leading role when it comes to technology. Because in the environment that I come from, most of our technology, the machines, the apparatus and everything, we acquired from France, that is in the police, for the hard work that you are doing in identifying some of the criminals who are using machines that are manufactured in France. But you did not think of that when you took away our opportunity to host the rugby. I'm sure you will agree that this project is undoubtedly one of the most important flagship heritage projects for my department in particular, for our country in general. It will certainly go a long way in demonstrating how equal partnership anchored on mutual respect contributes to the development agenda of the countries involved. On behalf of the ministry, the department, let me take this opportunity to once again thank France, in particular INA, and field in believing that together we can achieve more. What the NDP emphasized about providing information for all has been enhanced through this noble project, and many generations to come will benefit from this. The volumes and volumes of dictabells carried by archival repositories and the course throughout South Africa will bear testimony to how technology is indeed important and central to our lives. Technology is in this instance the key that can unlock our past to assist us in guiding our future. Our department will continue to invest in this kind of technology to serve all South Africans. Last but not least, we would like to take this opportunity to appeal to all South Africans who may be having dictabells in their custody to bring it to the National Archives so that information contained in them can assist us to fill the gaps that exist in our historical collection. This will in turn assist researchers and historians to rewrite our history, to correct and address the distortions that exist. I heard this morning before I started here, I was told that we should take care of this infrastructure as a department, and I did commit to that, that we are here for that. I think, can't remember the same, the writer, Dr. Mutlas, who said that it's good that I meet with you today, Deputy Minister. This is what you need to do for this institution, and that's what we are going to do. Last year, the minister said, I quote, "Not taking action will result in the loss of entire chapters of our heritage in less than 10 years and lead to impoverishment of our identity. The collective memory of the different peoples of the world provides the foundation for sustainable development, the defense of basic rights, and an understanding of the past, but that memory needs to remain accessible." Close quote. As I conclude, I want to reiterate these words again in support of this wonderful work that has been done by my department. I thank you all.
How do you? Rivonia trial, all the audio-visual material now digitized. Wonderful step in the right direction. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after that.
We're talking news, business and sporting updates both continentally and abroad. South Africa is in its first economic recession since 2009.
Currency has appreciated quite a lot, especially for this year. And it has benefited from a number of things, not so much to do with what was happening here at home.
The Islamic State-linked news agency AMAC claims the latest attack was launched because of Australia's backing in the US fight against the group.
Constad is one of the dozens of women who have accused Cosby of sexual assault, but hers is the only case recent enough to be subjected to criminal prosecution.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. Janusz Walusz, the killer of SACP leader Chris Hani, has been denied bail. Justice Minister Michael Masuta made this announcement at a media briefing in Pretoria a short while ago. Masuta said that Walusz has failed to show remorse. The Polish immigrant has spent 24 years behind bars for the assassination of Hani in April 1993. Masuda's press briefing follows a Supreme Court of Appeal ruling in August which gave the minister 90 days to make a decision. Walusz, a Polish immigrant, and Conservative Party MP Clive Derby-Lewis, who supplied the weapon that Walusz used to kill the SACP leader Chris Hani in the driveway of his Boksburg home, were sentenced to death for the murder in October 1993. Their death sentences were commuted to life imprisonment in November 2000. Now, as you know, Zimbabwe's Defence Force says in a statement broadcast on Zimbabwean television that it has made significant progress in its operation targeting criminals around the President Robert Mugabe. The military says it is continuing to engage with the Commander-in-Chief in talks on the way forward for the country and would advise the nation on the outcome as soon as possible. Well, we're also trying to get hold of our reporter in Botswana, Mzwandile Mbeja, to give us an update as to what is happening there at the SADC Troika meeting that's currently underway. Meanwhile, President Jacob Zuma is in Botswana for the South Africa-Botswana Binational Commission talks. President Zuma and President Ian Khama met to discuss various issues, including trade and investment. The two nations meet annually to review bilateral relations and cooperations. Let's now cross live to Botswana, where our presidential correspondent Mzwandile Mbeja is standing by. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome. Can you give us an update as to what's happening there?
Thank you very much, Elvis. Indeed, we are here in Gaborone, Botswana, where President Jacob Zuma is attending a binational commission. As you have said, this happens annually. This year, Botswana hosts South Africa. They're talking on a range of issues that includes issues of economy, issues of trade relations, and indeed issues of tourism. So, you know, these countries are neighbors and they actually interlinked in many ways. Botswana is full of people. They are, I mean, the majority of people living here are Botswanas, and you know, South Africa has also a lot of Botswana people. So you can see, basically, these could be different countries, but people and everything about us is really interlinked. So as we speak to you now, Elvis, they are behind closed doors discussing those trade relations.
Now, the bilateral commissions, what is President Jacob Zuma's main focus with regards to these?
Elvis, the president has spoken of the need to strengthen the relations. The relations are already good, but he says we need to strengthen it even further. That is why later on you will see the signing of the memorandum of understanding on tourism, because they also spoke at length about the issue of border control, how to best control the movements of people between Botswana and South Africa. Elvis, I may just add, because there is a topical issue at the moment, which is Zimbabwe. You'd remember that President Jacob Zuma is also the chairperson of SADC. So when he opened the meeting, when he gave his opening remarks, he said something about Zimbabwe. He basically said, as SADC, they are opposed to any unconstitutional changes of government in the region, because that is a stance that has been adopted by SADC, a stance adopted by the African Union. So they also in line with that. But he said, as they battle, as they enter into this phase of uncharted territory, these countries, Botswana and South Africa, stand ready to help in whatever way possible. You know that there's a possibility of an extraordinary summit that could happen within days. I'm sure the president is busy with consultations, and we understand that he will widen the consultations, possibly even going to Angola to meet with the chairperson of the Troika to really get the views on how to go about it, because this issue of Zimbabwe is definitely put everyone on a very difficult position. It's definitely uncharted territory, and no one knew that this could possibly happen.
Now, just to get back to Zimbabwe, is there some concern expressed by SADC around the situation in Zimbabwe?
They have expressed their very deep concern because they're saying the events unfolding in Zimbabwe, they have a potential not only of destabilizing Zimbabwe itself, but destabilizing the region, because South Africa hosts a number of Zimbabweans. And of course, a country like Botswana also hosts a number of Zimbabweans. So if the situation escalates, so you may see a lot of people perhaps fleeing in the event violence erupts. So they are saying they're very concerned about it. That's why they are engaging on consultation to make sure that this situation is stopped. President Zuma sent the 2 envoys to Zimbabwe who will report to him, we understand, later today in Pretoria when he has returned from Botswana, giving him an update on what is happening. And we understand from there is a possibility, as I've said, of calling an extraordinary summit on Zimbabwe, and of course doing more consultations with those involved.
Mzondile, thank you so much for that update coming from Gaborone there, where the President, Jacob Zuma, of course, the chairperson of SADC, sitting there and giving us that update, what's happening there. Now, we're going to give you an update on the question as well as the poll a little bit later in relation to Zimbabwe. It's a big crisis that's happening there. We'd like to find out from you, what do you make of what's currently happening there? But let's just go back to what happened earlier. Janusz Walusz, one of the killers of the SACP leader Chris Hani, has been denied parole. The Justice Minister Michael Masuta made that announcement earlier in Pretoria. He says Walusz has failed to show remorse. He spent 24 years in jail for the assassination of Hani.
There is a need for the offender to participate in individual therapeutic programs with a social worker to enhance his social functioning skills as recommended in the social workers report. The focus of the program should be on the following identified areas of intervention. 1, assertiveness. 2, decision-making skills. 3, approach, beliefs, and behavioral patterns that leads to anger and aggression. It appears that over the entire period of his incarceration, the offender has acquired neither further academic nor vocational skills that could enhance his prospects of reintegration into society. It is therefore recommended that the department should assist him acquire any such appropriate skills. In the result, I have decided that the placement of the offender on parole is not advisable at this stage, and his application is therefore not approved.
We'll take a short break, but when we return, we go back in relation to what is currently happening in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's Defence Force says in a statement broadcast on Zimbabwean television that it has made significant progress in its operation targeting criminals around the President Robert Mugabe. The military says it is continuing to engage with the Commander-in-Chief in talks on the way forward for the country and would advise the nation on the outcome as soon as possible.
The Zimbabwe Defence Forces, the ZDF, say significant progress has been made in their operation, adding that they have accounted for some of the criminals around President Robert Mugabe in order to bring them to justice since they were committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country, while others are still at large. In a statement, the ZDF said they are currently engaging with the Commander-in-Chief, President Mugabe, on the way forward and will advise the nation of the outcome as soon as possible. The ZDF said defense attaches accredited to Zimbabwe have been briefed to appraise their principals on the obtaining situation in the country, adding that they have also advised the bureaucrats to brief their cooperating partners. The Defence Forces implored other security services to continue operations and carry out their duties without any form of impediment to their operation. The ZDF said while they appreciate the enthusiasm by certain individuals and groups within society, they want to make it clear that they should not purport to be speaking on its behalf. The ZDF said they will periodically make press releases to keep the public informed of developments in the country. Meanwhile, the ZDF is commending the nation for remaining patient and peaceful as they carry out the operation.
Meanwhile, Zimbabwe Exiles has urged all Zimbabwean citizens to come out and march against President Robert Mugabe. Zimbabwe Exiles Tino Mombeu says it is time for change and Zimbabweans must come together and rebuild their country, irrespective of which political party they belong to. He expressed happiness over the latest developments.
We are actually very happy that at least after all these years of misgovernance, corruption, thuggery, and the theft of resources, at least we have got Zimbabwe speaking with one voice. And we want to take this opportunity as well as Zimbabweans to thank the Zimbabwe National War Veterans Association for the leading role they took in making sure that at least there is a semblance of change, or there is an effort to make things better in Zimbabwe.
Is this too little, too late, you think?
No, it's not too late. There's always time for everything, and in politics, decades. Nothing may happen in a decade, but in a week, it's quite significant.
Now, there was a meeting yesterday between the army and the president at the State House. Is that a step in the right direction?
Well, because we are not under a coup as the world would like to view it. We are just the people that are trying to sort their problems out. And we thank the army for stepping in and making sure that there is sanity, both in government and in the country. So we as Zimbabweans, we see it as an opportunity to say our voices are being heard, and we are also looking forward to hear that the president has resigned, because he knows very well that he has overstayed his welcome.
But you say it's not a coup.
It is not a coup.
But there's a lot of suggestions that the army has intervened, and it's supposed to be an interaction that is supposed to be facilitated by government. So what happened here is that the army has taken over.
No, the army is not taken over. Mugabe is still the president. I think we have seen him with the chief of defense forces. He's the commander-in-chief. We are talking to him, and we are only laying our grievances to him through the army. And very soon, the people themselves will be laying their grievances to him. And I believe you me, if he does not want to resign, tomorrow is another day. We are planning as Zimbabweans to march to State House. And the army is not going to stop anybody from that, because we think we have got the power as the people.
So who is in charge? Because it seems like the president is still giving the orders. He says he's not stepping down immediately. They're negotiating, but he says he needs to negotiate first.
Well, dictators have got a tendency of not letting go. This is very common. But when he is faced with the multitudes of Zimbabweans that will be marching in Harare tomorrow, then he has got no option. He has got to leave. And we want to see a dispensation where we have a national transitional authority. We don't care who is the leader. Could it be Mnangagwa, could it be Tsvangirai, whatever the case. At least it's change, and we are looking for change. That's what we want.
Talking about... Well, that was a little bit earlier, of course, that conversation. And that's why we asked this question to you on our poll today. We'd like to find out what do you make of this? Do you foresee a multi-party democracy for Zimbabwe at last? There you have the numbers. We'll come back to your comments a little bit later. But right now, the ANC stalwarts is meeting here at the Constitutional Hill in Johannesburg. Let's go there live on the podium. Jabulani-Ndebele.
At that particular moment, in the next room, the head of state is completely powerless, and it is difficult to include his sense of personal dignity in what might look like a complete capture of the body, the mind, and the spirit. At that precise moment, he renders his country completely vulnerable, exposed, its citizens scrounging around with an increasing sense of powerlessness for legitimate avenues of self-defense. It is hard to deploy constitutional order and the rule of law where these are demonstrably not recognized and respected by the head of state and a structure of governance that has been created to undermine the state. Moving towards a conclusion, what I have been struggling with up to this point is to suggest further that our gaze ought to strive to look beyond the political party perspective, or at the very least to reduce the intensity of focus on it, if only to strive to see a possible new grounding for a new politics in our country. It is to suggest that South Africans begin to have a self-conscious view of the plenitude of human condition, of the human condition in South Africa. Against this plenitude, the definition of a South African today could never be as crass as a racial and tribal simplifications of our apartheid past, which we have had to work so hard to discard. The South African of today is an inherently complex being. South Africans are the product of migrations over many centuries, even as far back as the last quarter of the 19th century. They traveled and lived far from where they were born, spoke languages other than the ones they were born into, married into communities and cultures where they were not born into, worked in professions and not commensurate with their legal and political status, officially carved out for them, traveled the world and returned with doctoral degrees, among others. There were simply too many and restless to be contained. When in 1910, the British handed over to Afrikaners a country with this kind of people, made restless partly by an economy that needed them without any commitment to their dignity as people, they handed over to the Afrikaners a headache of managing it all with no prospect of peace whatsoever, while making sure that metropolitan London would ever be the city of gold towards which all wealth created in the colonial periphery would gravitate. Finally, there is something wonderfully independent about the South African that emerged in 1994. It may speak to an entrenched protest culture, which at its highest moment toward the end was a struggle for liberation, may have called for the South Africans to be rendered ungovernable. It reminds me of Václav Havel's reflections on the prospect of a post-totalitarian system, where he says, life in its essence moves towards plurality, diversity, independent self-constitution. In our post-apartheid case, though, while a culture of protest may feed off the spirit of independence, an important attribute of a free people, it can run dry without an imaginative political project to give life and shape to it. And here I believe we have this challenge. For today, when I observe, for example, the trade union movement, in which has one of the greatest human assets of South African people, I survey the nature of annual industrial action, I am forced to reflect to a great deal that much of it no longer inspires public understanding and support the way it used to do. Indeed, in the resulting public inconvenience that's caused year after year, it may become even difficult for an inconvenienced public to distinguish between cable theft that cuts off electricity to home and trains on the one hand, and on the other, the annual industrial action that interrupts hospital services and other institutions, causing death and ill health and other things. By the same token, the demand for the next wage increase might be difficult to distinguish at some point from a corrupt motive to secure a tender by all means. In both cases, the actions could be indicative of a history of social activism that may have ossified into reflex habits that give little indication any longer of being driven by a transcendent purpose. I'd like to find end, therefore, and say the situation that I've been talking about calls for an understanding that transcends legacies of entrapment and for new language to emerge to describe the new environment in which to articulate change, what needs to be changed and how to change it. It calls for a huge, fair-minded effort across time. If it takes 9 months for a human being to be born after conception, it often takes the life of a nation. It is a work of time measured in decades and centuries that are nevertheless never a time of waiting, but always of becoming, and always a product of little efforts now and then. I always think of how the great intellectual and moral capacity that has been embedded in our national development plan has not been accompanied by an equally inspired political environment to draw maximum results from it. So the South African of today deserves a strong and imaginative political culture that, enabled by a constitutional order that is already in place, is grounded in the full complexity of who we have become now as people. I believe in the value of the discussions that will take place this weekend, the heart and the convictions from which they emerge. I believe in the guiding wisdom that will emerge and take South Africa to a new future grounded in a robust and hopeful imagination. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ndebele. I wish we had more time. I'm sure there would be many more people who would want to raise questions with you. But I'm hoping that as we go into the different panels and the facilitators of those panels, as well as the comrades who are giving inputs in those panels, will take many of the key points that you've made in your presentation. Professor Ndebele has also told us that his paper will be available, so we'll make that available to everybody. Okay, comrades, we're going to actually break for tea before we go into the panel discussions. But can I please ask, because we are running behind time, we can actually break for 20 minutes instead of half an hour. So please come back. It's now 11:36.
As you just heard there, they are going to take some tea and we'll cross their live a little bit later. But we'll take a short break as well. And when we return, sports news.
Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa is a South African politician, a skilled negotiator, businessman, activist, and former trade union leader. He was a visiting professor of law at Stanford University in the United States in October 1991. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison, Ramaphosa was chairperson of the National Reception Committee, former Secretary General of the African National Congress in 1991. Cyril was head of the negotiation team of the ANC in negotiating the end of apartheid with the National Party government. Elected the chairperson of Parliament's Constitutional Assembly in 1994 and played a central role in the government of national unity. He is the current deputy president under President Jacob Zuma since 2014.
I guess as deputy president of the ANC, I would have been aware. Let us move forward to build a credible and honest, patriotic leadership of the African National Congress. Let us move ahead to build a renewed ANC, a united ANC, an ANC that is united from top to bottom, bottom upwards. That is the type of ANC that our people want.
Siyavuma.
Welcome back. Time for the sports again. It's just hit 22 minutes before midday on this beautiful Friday morning out here in Johannesburg. Now, with rumours flying around at home that he's going to get a less than warm welcome back from the Springboks Northern Hemisphere tour, coach Alistair Coetzee is scrambling to find answers after his side's record 38-3 defeat to Ireland. He's made 8 changes to his matchday 23 to face France in Paris on Saturday evening. In comes fly half Andre Pollard and inside centre Francois Venter, while Dwayne Vermeulen is back at 8th man after over a year out of the Springbok setup.
After a woeful night in Dublin, Coetzee has benched both Elton Jantjies and Damian de Landy for Pollard and Venter. It'll be a gamble to see how Pollard gels with Ross Cronje as the halfback pairing. However, Venter's presence at centre should at least help shore up the midfield. Should Coetzee choose to employ the high ball game again, it'll be the same players, namely Cronje, Courtnall Skosan, Dylan Lades and Andries Coetzee, who collectively failed to execute or defend that tactic at the Aviva Stadium last Saturday. In the forward pack, Wilco Lowe gets his first test start for the Boks at tight head alongside Malcolm Marx and Tendai Mtawarira. While Dwayne Vermeulen, who plays for Toulon in France, joins the back row together with Francois Lowe and Sia Kolisi. More will be expected of them with ball in hand and at the breakdown. The rest of the changes are on the bench, where Trevor Nyakane and Dan Dupree join Jantjies and de Landy as the replacements. Coetzee has cautioned that Saturday's French team will not be the same one that was beaten 3-0 in the June series in South Africa.
Now, Proteas head coach Otis Gibson has used the ensuing week since his appointment to the Proteas hot seat well, choosing who to populate his war room with. Just yesterday, he revealed Warriors cricket coach Malibongwe Maketa as his assistant among 3 changes he's made to his coaching staff. You might know that Maketa is known as a miracle worker with the Eastern Cape franchise, the Warriors, and he was yesterday elevated from his other position as SAA interim head coach to the Proteas. He's one of 3 new faces in the coaching department. The others are former Proteas all-rounder Dale Benkenstein, who's one of the batting coaches, and another former Proteas, Justin Ontong, who's the new fielding coach. Now, sticking with other news that's making headlines for this weekend is Eric Tinkler will really need to summon up all the experiences gained from campaigns on the continent with his former team Orlando Pirates when he takes SuperSport United to Lumumbashi to play 5-time CAF Champions League and 2-time CAF Confederations Cup winners TP Mazembe this weekend. Eric Tinkler is taking a depleted but fired-up squad to the DRC to play in the CAF Confederation Cup first leg final in Lumumbashi on Sunday.
Tinkler is vastly experienced when it comes to CAF football. He was assistant coach at Orlando Pirates when they reached the Champions League final and was head coach when the Bucks qualified for the Confederations Cup final.
We're going to be relying on the depth that we have in the squad, and obviously that's the experience that I gained while being at Pirates. That was what was always being put into question, is the depth. Do you have the depth?
The only missing feather in Tinkler's cap is the gold medal. And against TP Mazembe in the DRC, it's like entering the lion's den.
We go into a game against a team that's highly experienced, 11 finals, be it Champions League, be it Confederations Cup. But you know, the morale and everything in camp with the players that are here is obviously very, very good.
The only South African club to win this tournament was Kaizer Chiefs. At the time, it was called the Mandela Cup. Thembasheba, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, Bidvest coach Gavin Hunt has described this coming week as the most important for the club this season. Wits will be playing Kaizer Chiefs in the first semi-final of the Telkom Knockout on Saturday, before they play the current African champions Mamelodi Sundowns just 3 days later. As you all know, the students are currently a shadow of the club that won a double last season.
Wits find themselves in unfamiliar territory after lifting the Absa Premiership title last season. They have the worst defensive record in the league so far, having conceded 13 goals in 9 matches. Hunt's side is second from the bottom of the log and need to change their fortunes around to move out of the relegation zone. And a win against Amakosi in a cup match will be the right medicine for players low on confidence.
Obviously, there's a couple of benefits. You know, morale, you know, always helps you in cup competitions. Obviously, we've got a big league game on Tuesday as well against Sundowns. Our league situation is not very good at the moment. I mean, we need more points. We certainly, I mean, it's so close. You've looked at the league, it's so close. One win here, no loss here makes it, you know, so. You know, but we've got to approach Saturday first. I think that's important. And then we've got a big week. I mean, we play Tuesday and Saturday. So that's important for us. This week it's a big week for us.
But the students shouldn't be taken lightly, having registered their first win of the season against Orlando Pirates in September.
I think at home we are strong. I think it's the last season we proved it become our fortress. It's where we like to play, where we won a lot of games and picked up a lot of points. It's different to go into FNB with not that many people there. You know, hopefully there'll be a lot of people at the game on Saturday, and it'll be an interesting game.
Meanwhile, Bloemfontein Celtic want to repeat what they did 5 years ago when they lifted the Telkom Knockout Trophy. Celtic have transformed following the appointment of Serbian coach Veselin Jolusic before the start of the season.
We don't have any pressure.
Our goal, our aim is to do the best what we can do at the moment. And we are going to compete until last minute of the game, and it is all.
But Celtic are still 2 matches away from realizing their dream. They first have to beat Polokwane City in Limpopo on Sunday in order to reach their first final in 5 years. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News.
Now, Qhubeka, a charity that moves people forward with bicycles, has distributed 175 bicycles to children and neighborhood watch volunteers in Parole in the Western Cape. The bicycles are funded by Team Dimension Data, Africa's first World Tour cycling team. The newest member, Louis Menkes, who's got back-to-back top 10 finishes in the Tour de France, was also there for the bicycle handover.
Team Dimension Data for Qhubeka believe that bicycles change lives, which is why they ride to raise awareness. They raise funds for 5,000 bicycles for Qhubeka programs every year. Menkes was with the MTN Qhubeka team from 2013 to 2015. In 2016, the South African was with the Lampre Merida team, where he finished 8th in the Tour de France. In 2017, with Team UAE Emirates, he finished in 8th again. Now it's time to go one better with his old team.
The last 2 years have been a good experience, and yeah, I think I learned a lot, and but now I've done it, and now it's nice to come back where things are familiar and where things are comfortable, and yeah, and also something where you're really proud of what you're doing. So yeah, it's a really good feeling being back here.
So what are the 25-year-old's goals for the upcoming season?
The goal is to try for a podium by 2020, and yeah, but I think for next year we're gonna take a slightly different approach and use the Giro as a test and a learning curve, or yeah, something to learn along the way. So yeah, really gonna go there and yeah, try to improve the skills and get some more experience.
Team Dimension Data for Qhubeka, since they were formed in 2013, have given over 17,000 bicycles to recipients across Africa. Qhubeka is an Nguni word which means to progress, to move forward, and bicycles help people to move forward. If Menkes moves any further forward, he could well end up on the podium at the Tour de France. Craig Murray, SABC News, Cape Town.
Now, in closing, South Africa is another world champion, a women's powerlifter. Elizabeth Berry bagged 3 gold, 3 silver and 1 bronze medal at this year's World Masters Championships in Sweden. She hopes to get more women in South Africa to participate in a sport that's been largely dominated by male athletes.
Elizabeth Berry teaches at the Cape Recife Special School. She started with powerlifting 6 years ago. Apart from her success at the World Championships, she also participated in the Commonwealth Games in the Masters category, where she broke the South African record.
We do need to get more women and involved. I think starting at a young age, maybe promote going to the schools, letting the girls know what it's about, what it entails, and that you're not going to get, often had the wrong impression, you're going to get big and bulky, but it's not actually, you actually get toned. It's also promoting, getting them to come to the competitions and seeing what they can do.
The seeds have already been sown. Mbasa Qelingela and Zana van Tonder are emerging powerlifters.
I feel like it's interesting doing powerlifting. That's my sport. I found what I'm interested in. And I'll be also doing part of my studies, you know.
Yeah, I want to achieve to go to SA next year. And I'm also now busy. Yeah, I want to go over my max. Well, try to reach my max in all my left and hope my back also get healthy again, so I can do my deadlift and bench again. No, deadlift and squat.
Berry also qualified for the All-Africa Championships in Algeria, but will not be competing due to lack of funds. Zolani Moya, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Now, before I let you go, a little earlier we asked you a really pertinent question about what's happening this weekend. SuperSport United out in Lumumbashi against that tout-puissant Mazembe, that's TP Mazembe. Are they going to come back with a positive result is what we asked you of SuperSport United. Unkabe Tsipoe comes with some very interesting thoughts here. He thinks that SuperSport can come back with a positive result, and he hopes that TP Mazembe will not use the usual dirty tricks that they're known for to win the match. Hashtag Matazanza. Yes, this man knows his football. He knows what does happen when people go there. Ernest Nsane says, yes, they will come back with positive results. Positivity all around. I like this. Pilani Dube reckons Eric has experience of competing in Africa, which will definitely help him and his team conquer Africa this time around. Yes, you all remember we are all in Africa as we speak. Nazim Protbom says, if it's not for bad officiating, SuperSport will definitely come back with positive results. There we go. Looking forward to Monday morning. And on Monday, of course, we'll be giving the results of that particular match. And hopefully it will all be good. Thanks very much for having joined us. My name is Kendall Makhamate. I will be back on Monday with more of the same, but definitely updated. Make sure you catch us again on Newsroom. Until then, the Selling City.
An exciting opportunity and an absolute must for those with the